Hello, this is, I'm Robin, and this is what I expected. I expected to be the lowest, have the lowest turnout of all speakers, being described as both a skeptic and from a Radio 4 science show. So that was always going to be a bit of a risk. This is the reason I've ended up here is partly because I don't say no to anything, but also because I'm interested. It's interesting with Robert Anton Wilson because sometimes when I do events for skeptics, and I mentioned that I like his work, there seems to be this kind of like surprise. I think, but that's what I like, is to be playful with ideas and to kind of avoid dogma. And the reason that I've ended up here is John Higgs. John Higgs, who's written, you may well, hopefully you know John's work, and John has written a fantastic book about Discordianism and the KLF and the burning of the £1 million. And it all worked out very well. I'd never met John before. I happened to one day tweet that I'd lost my copy of Quantum Psychology, at least in this world, and he said, you might like my book. He'd obviously seen my tweet. He said, can I send you a copy? I said, yeah, fine. I had no idea who he was. I haven't really thought about the KLF for a very long time. And so he sent me a copy of the book. But I didn't receive it until I'd been out one day in Northampton. And I'd been looking around a church with Alan Moore. And when I got home, I picked up, I went, the book's arrived. And the first page I opened it on, there was a long piece about Alan Moore and his involvement in the KLF and the burning of £1 million. I thought, well, there we go, that's just a coincidence. And then I went down to Brighton and I was walking past Wax Factor, which is a shop that sells various books and records. And I saw in the window a book from 1952 about how it is that unidentified flying objects, how they actually fly. And this guy had worked out how UFOs work. So I thought, brilliant, I have to get that. How much? 20 quid. It was a lot of money, but I thought I need a book written by a man in 1953 which explains how UFOs fly. Then I tweeted a photograph of that, and John, who I didn't know lived in Brighton, went, bollocks. I just walked past that shop and I was going to go back and buy that book. Then I went and did my science show that night, and afterwards a friend of mine, a session musician, came backstage. He went, I've brought a friend of mine. She's a scientist. I reckon she was the only scientist in your audience tonight who used to be on Top of the Pops. And obviously I went, why did you used to be on Top of the Pops? And she said, I used to be one of the backing singers for the KLF. And that's what I find very delightful. Reading that book, what I find particularly exciting about it is merely the fact that when you decide, when you reach a point of reading about the KLF, I hadn't thought about the KLF for a very long time, and then by being aware to that, I noticed all these coincidences. And it is a delight to know that as human beings, we can't be aware of all the coincidences that are around us, or we would not move forward. We would do nothing. We would just, there are so many things going on when we are, I do a thing on Steve Lamac's show on Six Music, where I'm kind of like a record-playing psychic medium, in which I am played 6 songs by a listener, and I have to work out their age and their gender and their likes, their dislikes, hobbies, what their job is, all of these kind of things, based on a record by The Cure and a record by Scott Walker and whatever else. And I am always amazed at however much I get wrong, like, age and gender and hobbies and likes and dislikes, they still go, that was really amazing, right? And this is like... So what I've made is I've just made some notes. I was going to do some PowerPoint, but I won't. I was going to show you a scan of my brain that I had done in July. I had a brain scan, which was, I was lucky I was having it for fun. If you're having a brain scan, try and make sure you're having it for fun. I met a guy on a train from Tunbridge Wells, and he came up to me and he said, I listened to your radio show. Would you like to have a brain scan? And which seemed rude. And but he said they were separate things. He meant, I knew you liked science, not I imagine there was something wrong with your brain. And so I had this brain scan, and what I wanted to talk about really was some of the things. The first thing that I saw today, unfortunately I couldn't see the play last night because I was doing a gig in Hull, but the first thing I saw was C.J. Stone. And C.J. Stone, how many of you saw that, where he was talking about festivals and the importance of festivals? And I think again of Alan Moore. And Mel, you were there. You were at Latitude as well, weren't you? You came to the Latitude Festival. And Alan and Mel, I don't think you'd been to a festival since probably the 1970s. And the shock of Latitude. A few days later, I saw Alan. I said, Alan, how did you find... If you don't know Latitude, right, it is one of the many what I would call kind of Waitrose-based festivals, right? It's It's fun, it's great, you know, it's got a locked fine salmon bar, but they do run out of salmon sometimes, but, you know, it's kind of... And I said, Alan, how did you find it? And he still looked in a state of shock where he went, it seemed that I was the only one there to spoil everyone's fun. And it was... And this is what I found kind of, you know, festivals are still fantastic. When I go to Glastonbury, I love hanging around Billy Bragg's left field stage, where you see a lot of kind of people, you know, you see union leaders and you see activists and you see campaigners and you see all the people who are not in the mass media. All of, you know, if we go back 30 years, you would have seen that on a chat show like the Parkinson Show, you would have actually seen union leaders like Jimmy Reed. Jimmy Reed, the great Glaswegian union leader, he was on Parkinson. We don't have that anymore. You know, there was no point on the Graham Norton Show where you'd have man go, please welcome Cameron Diaz, Viggo Mortensen, and now from Unite, it is the union leader, Len McCluskey, right? That doesn't happen. And I was thinking about, you know, this is one of the important things, which is we seem to have lost some of the kind of the totemism, there is so much out there that its importance starts to vanish. Festivals are a wonderful thing that we had a lot of fun. We had fun. But you don't leave a festival necessarily feeling that your view of the world has changed. To me, the best examples of art and the best examples of science are when you are offered an idea, when you see a vision, when you see something that from that point onwards, your view of the world is slightly changed. You know, I find that when I do the science shows and I meet people who, whether it might be about epigenetics or evolutionary biology or particle physics, and I meet them and afterwards they've given me this one little idea about the nature of the behaviour in the particles inside an atom, or about what it is that when we look at people and we think about the genetic code within them, when we think about the idea of genes that can be turned off and switched on. And then when I view the world from that point onwards, I see it differently. And I think that we are offered so much so immediately that much of it is becoming worthless. You know, when you go and get music now, that journey, that grail of finding the bizarre independent release that you had heard briefly on John Peel at midnight, and you couldn't get it from your local Woolworths because it was too fucking weird and they didn't stock anything by Blast First or Fire Records or whatever it might be, and you went on a quest and then eventually you retrieved this 7-inch single and you looked at it like the delight as you just looked at the grooves. What's on the grooves? Is it going to be as wonderful as it was midnight when I was under the blankets, you know, surreptitiously listening to John Peel? And now you go, I've heard it, and here it is on the internet. Now, one way that is a delight, that is fantastic, it's instantly accessible, but do these things then become worth less and less? I was chatting to a friend of mine here on the way here. He'd recently done a radio course. And he was saying that on the radio course, they looked at the difference in the number of songs played by commercial radio stations. And it was actually lower than the figure he gave me in the car, which I still found hideous, that a commercial radio station, on average, in a month, plays you 150 individual songs, right? And this, which is incredible to me, that when you think, I've just been listening to the new Scott Walker album, right? And if you do listen to it, by the way, the best time is very late at night when you're alone on the last train out of Northampton. It's really effective, right? But you don't, if you tuned in, if you listened to Heart FM, the likelihood of Heart FM playing Here's Brando by Scott Walker, and so that's not going to happen, right? And a presumption has been made. This is basically, I suppose, what I should really be talking about, the presumption that has been made. Because I haven't got past point number 1 and I've written down 23, right? What I love about Robert Anton Wilson is a phrase that he popularised that was originally Timothy Leary's, I believe, which is the reality tunnel, right? The reality tunnel is, Robert Temple was talking about the fact that we are being watched all the time by cameras, that we are being monitored all the time, and about, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was about the kind of the shrinking of our world. But the shrinking of the world is not merely the fact that we are being observed by these things, it's also the world that we are being given, what is being made with the other cameras as well, what is being placed on the television stations, what is being placed on your radio stations, this continually shrinking vision of the world that means that a party like UKIP is now, in many people's minds, a viable alternative. A party made up predominantly of venal racists, some of whom deny the Holocaust. And, you know, which is, it's a pretty interesting thing to deny, because I reckon 6 million people hiding is fucking amazing. I think that is 12 million. If you count everyone, that's a pretty good game. You can come out now, ta-da, what a big wardrobe, right? It's just, so this is the image of the world that we're being offered is, we have more television stations than we've ever had before, and we have less and less on it. When I was growing up, again, when we had 3 stations, ITV, the commercial station ITV, had 5 political documentaries a week. Prime time political documentaries. That has all gone. That is shrinking of our reality tunnel. This is shrinking of the world that we are offered, and every time that the less we're offered, the harder it is for us to create a true image of the world. I mean, I know you can never truly have, this is one of the delights. One of the delights is the fact that once you accept that your vision of the world is not going to be an objective vision of the world, what you can do is narrow down the subjectivity. You can use critical thinking, scientific method, etc. You can get a kind of more and more specific view of the world. But once you're aware of your possible biases, then as long as you're always questioning, again, going back to that idea of getting rid of dogma. I mean, what we see as well as someone who has, I'm an atheist and I've kind of talked about it, and that means that I sometimes get people who, well, some people seem to confuse me with Richard Dawkins. I was being interviewed by Johnny Walker a while back. And Johnny Walker, I answered something, he went, that's not what Richard Dawkins says, though. And I went, but that's very much my take on my own atheism, is I don't have to follow that particular deity of Richard Dawkins, right? This is the delight. And I've done a few Christian festivals, actually. This is one of the reasons that I try and branch out and meet as many different people as possible, is once you confront some of the people that you are, some of the groups you're bigoted against, you go, oh, they're not how I thought. everyone used to have that thing about, say, for instance, I don't like gays. I mean, Trevor's gay and he's all right, but the others, right? And the others I don't know, they are what Gary Bushell has told me they are. They are what Kelvin MacKenzie has informed me they are. And BBC, please fucking stop putting Kelvin MacKenzie on television shows, because I don't think pointless celebrities, I don't think Kelvin MacKenzie, though that is correct if you go lowercase, it's just, and this is what I find intriguing, which is, I went to this Christian festival. They rang me, it's called Greenbelt. It's a lovely kind of liberal Christian, it's really nice, it's great fun, right? And it's, when they rang me up, I have to admit, initially they went, would you like to come and do a Christian? I was like, hang on a minute, is this a trap? Does this happen on an island? Because if it happens on an island, I've seen that film, I'm not coming, right? And it's, and I went, and the first thing was that I was reminded of the fact that when television is made, it is all about creating melodrama. Question Time is not a political show. It is basically a light drama. It has no interest in offering you the 5 people with the greatest information, the greatest knowledge on the subjects there. What they want is they want to put Melanie Phillips on from the Daily Mail, and they want her to be mad. They want her, and she's very good. She really does manage to rise to that offer. And it's, she will sit there and she will say the trouble with the illegal drugs trade in Britain is that it has an advertising budget of £10 trillion. And then Mark Steele goes, and no one can talk for about a minute after that because of their confusion. They want to create, so when you see Christians, for instance, on television, they don't want to go, oh, look, here's some kind Christians with a general liberal outlook and take on the teachings of Jesus. They go, oh, look, here's Stephen Green from Christian Voice. He's fucking insane. His Christianity is driven by the fact it can be an alibi for his bigotry. Bring him on, right? And so I went and I did this show, and I had a lovely time. I met lots of interesting people, lots of human rights activists, and there were hundreds of people watching Peter Tatchell. Right now, if you told Stephen Green, they've gone to go and see, a human rights activist, a gay man, a man who was pilloried by the media, you don't imagine. Here they all are, and they're watching it. And then afterwards, I'm doing my show, and I'm talking about science, and I'm talking about Darwin, and I'm talking about kind of different ideas of evolution. And then afterwards, I had this wonderful bit. I went, the only downside of Greenbelt, who is it? Are you from Have you been to Greenbelt, right?
My wife ran the Honour Show at Greenbelt for 2 years running, and she described herself as a wishy-washy pagan.
Well, that's what I love. There are wishy-washy pagans, there are filthy atheists there. It's like my favourite church. I've got to admit, right, I'm a big fan of the Quakers and the Unitarians, right? The Unitarians, most of all, just because Unitarians, they go, well, join our church, but, we don't want to push it out too. You don't have to believe in God. I love that. I did a... I did a Unitarian. This is why sometimes when I see these kind of these atheist Sunday assembly things, I think, don't bother starting something new. Join the Unitarians. I did a Unitarian event, and the main thing, they're not reading from the Gospel of Matthew. They were reading from Dennis Potter being interviewed by Melvin Bragg. Today we'll be talking about the blossomist blossom. And I think when Dennis Potter said that, this is... So afterwards, as you know, if you've been there, right, the downside of Greenbelt is they only have one bar, right? So there's this huge festival. They set up this tent in the middle of it. It used to be Cheltenham Racecourse. The bar is called the Jesus Arms. And I was there with the Methodist minister from Salford at 2 a.m, right? We're getting drunk, and he goes, bloody hell, they close at 2 a.m, and I'm not even drunk yet. He's the kind of Methodist minister I like to hang around with, right? And someone later on said to me, but Jesus' arms should never close. And and then these three women came up to me right at the end of the evening, and I'd had a lot of fun talking to the audience, and I thought, nothing had been, all of the different ideas that when I asked about how many people kind of were happy to accept that the ideas of Darwin are certainly, a good starting point in terms of why we have the variety of life, most people put their hands up, they were interested in it. But these three women stormed up, and the first one just came right up to me, right in my face, and just went, we're enjoying your talk this afternoon, we're enjoying it, and then you ruined it. I said, oh, sorry, what was that, right? And I thought, what did I say? What was it? They went, right at the end, you can't remember? I said, no, I can't remember. She went, 50 minutes in, laughing away, and then suddenly you ruined it for all three of us. I said, what was it? She said, well, right at the end, you brought up Stephen Green from Christian Voice, and all three of us said cunt without meaning to, and now we feel a bit sinful. So I very rarely say cunt on any form of stage, but I always believe if it's the reported speech of three Anglican ladies from Berkshire, then it's fine, right? So that to me is and I do worry. I worry sometimes that with some of the ideas that are being talked about here, where people do believe there's a kind of, an antagonism between what I would consider to be good science and some of it. Consciousness to me it's a great, we are so far off really working out what consciousness definitely is. And I think sometimes sometimes you have to be pragmatic with other people's bullshit as well, which is, does it really matter if they believe something that you think is bullshit? Does it really matter? It's like ghosts, for instance. I met Sarah Miles a while ago. Sarah Miles, of course, famous for being in Ryan's Daughter and The Sailor Who Fell from Grace and the Sea, The Servant, etc. And so I was doing a radio show with her, and she just turned to me at one point and she went, you know Richard Dawkins, don't you? I want to get Richard Dawkins because he doesn't believe in ghosts. There's a house that I know. I want to take him there and chain him to the bed. Do you have his email address? I was tempted. But I was thinking about that I don't, if someone believes in ghosts, for instance, if someone has a belief in ghosts, I don't care. It doesn't matter. To me, again, it is always about, if someone just has a belief that they enjoy that belief, that's fine. If that belief then becomes a spur, and if someone believes in ghosts, and by believing in ghosts, they believe that their ghost wants them to kill all the cats and children in the world, then I go, well, now we better start dealing with this, actually, because this seems to be a reasonably, unruly ghost you've created in your mind. And I do. That's one of the things that I love is when you do, however rational you may think you are, you will have moments where your rationalism falls apart. Again, I was talking about this, I think, in Northampton, it was where if you ever are you're drunk and you decide that the best shortcut is climbing over the fence and going through the graveyard, right? I don't care how rational you are. If it's a really long graveyard, you will find it exactly halfway from either fence. You will suddenly notice that gravestone that's the shape of an angry nun, and you'll go, oh my God, it's the angry nun ghost! And then when you get to the other side, you go, I don't think it was. I think it was just a gravestone shaped like... Why do they shape gravestones like angry nuns? They should stop that, right? But it's still, all of these things which just remind us of the way that our mind can conjure up so many beautiful visions, some of which may well be illusions. The human imagination, but again, science and imagination, they go hand in hand. Great science comes not from just collating facts, it comes from imagination. And then confronting yourself with the way that you picture the world is a very, very important thing to do. Sometimes, though, when you are being pragmatic about people's bullshit, some of the bullshit you really do have to fight against, right? Now, if it is we have so much rubbish being written about climate change. Climate change is an incredibly important issue, for human civilization, for so many different creatures, for the fact that, the problem I think we have now to some extent is the fact that we are the second or third generation, someone of my age anyway, second generation, who has not had to spend that much time visiting cemeteries to see people buried far younger than they need have died. We are, for those of us who were kind of born after 1930, we have, I speak to people in their 80s and 90s. I was younger than that, people in their 60s. I was talking to a guy who was brought up in Middlesbrough. He was from a pretty shitty area of Middlesbrough, and he talked about his school friends who died of tuberculosis, right? So, we do need to arm ourselves with the historical knowledge that reminds us that access to clean water, that access to things like vaccination, and indeed the fact that we keep having to move ahead with vaccination because that is involved in evolution as well, right? That we have lots of things now that most human beings never had. At that point, we have to be pragmatic and go, we might not have the totally right answer, but we have the least wrong answer. That, to me, is when kind of rational knowledge statistics become very, very important. A journalist wrote to me. I have a lot of arguments with journalists. Still, my favourite is there was a man who wrote for the Telegraph about climate change from, I suppose I meant to say from a sceptical or contrarian position, but I would just say from a moronic, financed position. And he was, I'm not really meant to mention this, I probably shouldn't have even said if it's being filmed, I shouldn't really have said that it was financed, but I imagine he probably is. And I can't, every time, this is the thing, he's a libertarian, right? He's a libertarian, but when I made a joke about him once, he threatened me with legal action. There's someone who didn't purchase a dictionary, and so I can't tell you his name. All I can tell you is that he's called James Dellingpole, and And he is, in fact, I think 2 times ago when I played Liverpool, when I was at the Unity, and I happened to make a joke about him, and someone must have tweeted that I made a joke about him and his opinions on climate change, and in the interval I just received a tweet from him which just said, "My ears are burning, I wonder why." And obviously I replied, "I imagine it's that bloody global warming," and because it's... we need to be open to people's beliefs, but sometimes you see that there's a very specific and bigoted and dogmatic reason that they have their beliefs, right? And this was this other journalist who wrote to me, he said, if science is so good, why do they keep having to change it? And I kind of explained that to me is the very best science. That's what it should be. Science should be a change. It is not about the right. It's not about having the right answer. It is genuine. It's the least wrong answer, and we should always be ready to challenge different things. This was a different journalist. Another argument. My God, so many. But there was another journalist who I was doing a thing in Manchester, QEDCon. And I was trying to explain that we're in quite a difficult position now because we have so much information available to us, and as you probably know, the speed of the expansion of information is enormous. Richard Feynman talked about the fact that the boundaries of our ignorance expand on a daily basis, and that's something we should be doing as well. If you're reading well, if you're inquiring about the world in a good way, then every single day you should go, I'm a little bit more ignorant than I was yesterday. Because you'll have found out some brilliant new ideas, but in the act of finding out those ideas, going, I didn't realise that I didn't know all these things as well. That's part of that. That's the excitement and the acceptance of, one, the fact you're ignorant about many things, but two, not being complacent about that. Not going, I think I'll just remain here and go, I want to find out more stuff. Ah, shit, now I found out that. Turns out I don't know about that either. I need more books, right? I need a bigger telescope, right? That's the act. That is what we need to do. And we are human beings. We have curiosity. This is what I was thinking sometimes. Self-consciousness can feel like a burden. There can be those moments where when you have feelings of depression and melancholy, when you feel dragged down about stuff, and you think, if I wasn't aware, would it be better not to be self-conscious? And of course, the truth is, there is no better or worse, because if you're not self-conscious, then there isn't better or worse. You're a thing that isn't even aware of the world. And that burden, again, to use a Richard Feynman quote from a monk he met, the keys to heaven also open the gates to hell. And that's what self-consciousness is, the problems we have from I don't want to be, I was talking about this recently where sometimes I watch some of the mass media and I watch things going out and I think it has to be better than this. It has to be, right? Gogglebox. Now, people love Gogglebox, right? I am told that Gogglebox is a brilliant show. Oh, have you not seen it? It's people watching television. I go, really? And they go, yeah, but it's not just that, because some of them are drunk and some of them are camp and some of them are posh, and they say things like, oh, look at her, she's fat. It's brilliant, right? And I genuinely cannot, whatever people say to me when they say it's a brilliant view of humanity, it's not. It's people fucking watching television. If you are watching a television which is showing you people watching television, just watch yourself. Watch other people. Don't watch the television. Go and look through the window of your neighbours. It'll be more intriguing to see their human reaction to your peeping, right? Don't become an animal like a sea squirt. The sea squirt is an animal that when it feels secure, it attacks itself to a rock and it eats its own brain. That, to me, that is Gogglebox. Gogglebox is how comfortable is this? Yum, yum, yum. It's just, you've got to... And we've ended also now, if you like interesting ideas, if you like great literature, we have a culture which constantly goes, oh, that's a little bit smug, isn't it? It's a little bit smug to have tried to read the Brothers Karamazov, isn't it? Oh, isn't it smug to like the films of Tarkovsky? Not really. Maybe I just want to embrace something that's brilliant and wonderful, and maybe I am prepared to be confused by things. No, it's really smug to like good things. How arrogant to enjoy art, right? It's just and that's what I find. Some of the art galleries I go to, I get really angry. I have out loud in the Tate Modern gone, for fuck's sake, right? I have those moments. And then even that, when we are in art galleries, and of course, the Tate Liverpool, and there are other, of course, many others, smaller galleries, and there's fascinating art that has come from Liverpool, and you think that that's another thing we have to do. When you're going, sometimes, I was going around to the Tate Modern once, and there was this exhibition, and the way people were reacting to the exhibition started to annoy me. The images of pornography they saw, one of them went, you look at that, and it's so immediate. And you think, yes, it is, it's there. That's why it's immediate, and it's... He said, you look at that and you see there's two people having sex, and by looking at it, you can't help but think of sex. You think, this is not... yes, of course. You're seeing a thing, right? And that, to me, is like... When I was in Oslo and I was looking at some of the work of... who's that bloke who does... used to all the porny stuff with Cicciolina and Jeff Koons, right? And I was looking at Jeff Koons. He had... One of his works is just some vacuum cleaners, right? What I thought, that's fine, it's some vacuum cleaners in a Perspex box, but what that's a reminder of is use the eyes and the way that you look at the world when you're in an art gallery. Look at the world, don't just look like going like that when you're in an art gallery. Do that when you're standing on a station platform, when you're walking down the street. Look at everything, as much as every moment of free mental time that you have. Scrutinise the world that you're in, and it will become a far more exciting world. And so that's kind of, I suppose, right, here are the notes for you, right? Firstly, in terms of brilliant things, point two, right, is there are some things which people get really, like telepathy. People go, isn't telepathy amazing? I want to investigate more. Remember that every single one, empathy is telepathy, right? Without even going into the kind of unexplained, the fact that you are able to imagine how other people may well be feeling in a situation. One of the greatest things to have, mutation, heredity, natural selection has led to that ability. Empathy is beautiful and fantastic, and that is in its own way. Before we then go, I want to actually be able, because reading people's minds, when I was younger, I remember, imagine if we could read people's minds. Wouldn't it be amazing? Well, then they invented the internet, and it turns out it can be very bleak. But it's still like just But empathy is a great thing. I was going to say, again, this thing that Brendan O'Neill, the QED con, the journalist I had an argument with, I was talking about information, and he was saying that it was arrogant. It was arrogant that everyone's opinion was worth the same, right? And I said, we can't look at it like that. When we are dealing with some of the major issues that we as human beings are having to deal with, we have to accept now there is so much information that we may well have to turn to the experts, people who've really focused on this area, people who've studied it. But that doesn't mean we have to be complacent. If, for instance, again, going back back to climate change. If you are sceptical, if you want to ask the questions, then the first thing you need to do is do a little bit of the research and find out what the right questions are to ask. Find the right people to ask those questions. Wonder why certain people have the opinions they have, right? When I went to see, narrative, that's the thing we have as human beings, this beautiful, the love of storytelling. And there's an operation called Cape Farewell that takes artists out to areas that are going through rapid change due to the change in the climate, and then the artist and the scientists work together. And I saw this scientist basically show the shells of a mollusk, which the shell has remained, if you look at the fossil record, the same for millions and millions of years. But in the last 100 years, it has gone through rapid change. And those small details, small stories, it's not always the big story that will be the thing that really makes people think on. Sometimes it's just the little details, the little story that then really does open a new way of viewing the world. And this guy, he said to me, I just couldn't, eventually, right, he said, the world isn't more complex than it was. I went, oh, it is. It really is. And I said, if you go back 70 years, most of the things in your house, if they stopped working, if you had the wherewithal and you were prepared to put the time in, you would be able to mend those things. Many of the things we have around us now are magic boxes, right? And so, we can find out about them, but some of them we can't really bother. We'll just go and get someone to repair it. And this bloke was still banging on about, he said that you're like the people who didn't want the women to get the vote. And I was like, I don't really know how these two things link. And eventually I just grabbed his iPad and I went, could you fucking mend this? And he looked very scared. And but we can, we can learn these things. So I was going to talk about that. Amnesia effect. This is another important thing. Murray Gell-Mann's thing. The narrative that we are being given, which is, question time. Question time had nothing about the NHS when major changes were going through Parliament and the Lib Dems were signing things that were against everything that many of the people who voted for them. And the question time had nothing about the NHS. The BBC will focus on going, oh, here's another NHS hospital that's gone wrong, but it won't focus on the change. And that's, a friend of mine was on Question Time, just in the audience, and she came in and she went, oh, I've got a question about the NHS, and they went, oh, we don't want to do that because that's last week's news. And she went, but there was nothing on it last week about it. And they went, oh, well. So that's the thing. That's why we have to be really, really aware. The amnesia effect is, Murray Gell-Mann said this, and I think it's a great point. Murray Gell-Mann said that when you're reading a newspaper, you've all probably had that moment, you're reading about something you actually know about, right? And as you read it, you go, well, that's wrong. That's not right at all. This absolute nonsense. And then you turn the page and go, oh, that's a very interesting story about Syria. And you think, hang on a minute, is it only just by chance that every time they write about something you know about, it's all shit, but they're fine on everything else, right? So I think, those questions, things, I was actually going to talk about what I'd read in the Illuminati papers the other day, but there's no time. I was reading about the abolition of stupidity, a wonderful little essay in there. So I'll probably just, and that's actually another thing, which is Robert was talking about the tragedy in Robert Anton Wilson's life, the murder of his daughter. And that to me was I've almost not talked about reality tunnels at all, have I? Or maybe I have, I don't know. And, but it's, when there is that idea, which is when people say, the opinions are my own, you see that on people's columns, or you see that, the opinions held are my own. I think even that has a level of arrogance, doesn't it? Are those opinions your own, or are those opinions just built on all of the different things around us? And therefore, before you really declare an opinion is your own, you really have to scrutinise that thing. And I found that, how much longer have I got, John, by the way? Have we 5 minutes? Okay, right, I'll cover the other 23 in 5 minutes, right? There were 3 things that happened this year. I have to tell this story because I just love this, right? When we were doing Infinite Monkey Cage, the science show that I do on Radio 4, we had Alan Moore on as well. Normally an audience I have to explain this, but most of you probably know he's a self-declared wizard. And he remains, by the way, the only self-declared wizard we have in the Radio 4 science unit. We have a very low wizard count. And one of my favourite things, we were talking about the work of Julian Jaynes and his book on the bicameral mind and the nature of the inner monologue, and whether, human beings for, a few thousand years ago believed the inner monologue was not their inner monologue, but from an outside agency or deities. And Brian Cox kept kind of interrupting, going, well, I'm not really sure. And Alan went, no, let me continue. And he talked about Homer's Iliad and Homer's Odyssey and all of these other things, and the wine-dark sea. Why would Homer describe the sea as wine-dark? And Brian kept trying to chip in, but he couldn't manage to chip in. He tried again. And then eventually he just gave up, and there was this kind of 5 minutes, these beautiful ideas about the inner monologue and consciousness, and Brian just sitting there in silence. And to me, one of the best things I've seen in the last year is seeing a particle physicist beaten in an argument by a wizard. And it's just like those kind of moments are... And, but it is, you know, it's so hard for us to kind of dislodge the things that we want to believe. And it's, I mean, when I went this year, I met someone on a train who, not the Tunbridge, I met another person from Birmingham University Psychology Department who just came up to me and went, I'm from the Psychology Department in Birmingham, can we do some tests on you? And I said, yes, obviously, because I love that kind of thing. And most of you will know about the rubber hand illusion. If you've never, has anyone here done the rubber hand illusion? Right, if you haven't, do this tonight. All you need is a friend and a marigold. And it's fantastic, right? So I went there. This person, Hayley, who was actually doing the experiment on me, actually had a proper, like, kind of rubber hand. You can get a joke shop rubber hand as well. That'll work, right? It's a beautiful thing to do. And it shows you how your mind puts together an image of the world. And again, it just makes you aware of trying to question everything and why you believe what you believe, right? So you sit down behind this table, and on this occasion, I placed my left arm under the table. And then the false hand was put on top of the table. So I can't see my left arm. I just see this false hand that's about this level here. And then I connected my sleeve to it so it looked like an extension of my body. Then the first thing they ask you to do is just stare at the hand, right? You just stare at the hand, and 1/3 of people, within a minute, including me, you start to go, that's a bit weird. That seems to feel as if that's my hand. I know it's not. My hand's down there, but I can't feel the hand that's under the desk. I can feel that rubber hand, right? Your mind, it's basically taking in this image, and it's going, that probably is your hand. That's what you can feel now, right? And it's really, at times you have these little moments where you go, oh my God, my hand feels very numb. I can't seem to move my fingers. Oh yes, it's a rubber hand not collected to my body. Well done, rational mind, right? Then they start to stroke your real and hidden hand with a brush, and the rubber hand, exactly the same time, in exactly the same direction. 2/3 of people, sometimes up to 80% of people, within a minute go, right now I'm really freaked out. Even the ones who haven't felt it was their hand before, now they can feel the tickling of that brush in a rubber hand not connected to their body, right? And you, at this point, I didn't think it would happen for me. Most people think, oh, it's not going to happen to me, right? And they're just brushing and brushing, and they just keep doing it. So you're really lost in this suddenly discombobulating, disconcerting moment. You're just staring and staring and staring, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, they get a hammer and go, ah! And you go, whoa, like that, right? And the rubber hand goes flying, and you go, why did you do that? You really thought that was your hand, didn't you? Yes, I did! Why? I'm a psychologist. That's what we do. And it's... And then there's another one again. How many of you have ever done the thing of going into your bathroom or anywhere where you've got a kind of rectangular mirror that's about that size and staring at yourself in the mirror? Has anyone done this? It's so fantastic, isn't it? It really is. What did you turn into?
I don't know. It's just nothingness.
I got that as well. Don't worry. Yeah. My head disappeared. Right, now I'll tell you. Shall I tell the others or shall I? No, this is this. Again, this is why I don't take any drugs anymore. I just rely on dopamine, and it's getting me through just about. But this is such a delightful thing, right? And as I said, by the way, the rubber hand illusion, you literally only need a glove, anything like that, a glove, a friend, and just do it, and it will. I promise you, that's all you need. You don't need a rubber hand, right? The Caputo, it's sometimes called the Caputo effect, right? This is what you do. You go into the bathroom. You need a low light, about 20 to 30 watts is roughly what they say, but just a low light, candlelight, whatever, so you can kind of see your face in a slightly shadowed way, but you can see all the details. Then you stare directly into your own eyes, right? It's right into your own eyes. And within, would you say it was about a minute, right? Yeah, it seems like quite a while, because when it's a weird thing, you're staring at yourself. Right? This is a moment of experimental narcissism, right? And you just stare and stare in there. And I found it was about a minute, 2 minutes. What starts to happen is your head starts to change, right? Some of you will think that you've suddenly become very, very old. Some people turn into a monster, both you and me. Heads disappear, right? And this is all genuine. And basically what's happening is you are giving your mind so little input that eventually goes, nothing seems to be going on. I better start making some shit up. So that's basically what... And all of these things. So that is, I didn't really, it doesn't matter, it was fun, I enjoy. This is, have I got 1 minute? Can I say one thing? Right, this is just something I love. If you get a chance, there's a film called Young at Heart. I love this film. Young at Heart is, it's a real life documentary about an octogenarian and nonagenarian choir. And they sing songs by Sonic Youth and Talking Heads and all manner of things, right? It's great. And not even the Sonic Youth mainstream stuff. I'm not talking about the stuff on Goo. I'm talking about when they return to experimental noise, right? It's brilliant. And because they're quite an old choir, there, obviously, during the making of the film, some people do die. And one of the main guys that we've been following, we think he's going to die, right? He's very, very ill. And then the choir master, he's fantastic. The choir master is like Harry Shearer, right? He's younger than the rest, and he comes in and he goes, great news, everyone, by the way. Bob, who we thought was going to die, Bob is just fully recovered. He's fine again, and he's going to be back with us in about 2 weeks. So that's great news. And he goes, now, some of you have nearly died, I know. Jack, you've nearly died, haven't you? Yeah, I have nearly died, yeah. Didn't enjoy that. Don't want to do that again, but I presume I'll have to. Millie, you've nearly died. I have nearly died. And then he looks at this one woman and he goes, Bess, you have died, haven't you? And she goes, yes, I have. I was dead for 2 minutes. And he goes, did you see the light? And she says, I didn't look. And I just, that to me is, so thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for inviting me. Cheers.
Pull it,